I think at least 50% of your job needs to be done by AI as you're doing it today. If you don't, you're going to be out of a job. If all our work is going to be done by AI, what the heck are we going to do?
I'm curious how the AI will get incentivized. What will be the appraisals for AI?
How will you pay it?
How will you pay it?
Yeah,
And he may actually leave the organization if you don't pay him enough.
absolutely. And the payment
Well,
may be in
if he's
kind.
been trained well.
The payment may be in
Trained well.
kind that I want to run on that TPU or this GPU. Otherwise, I'm not working here. I need a better GPU. But I can't like keep burning.
Or need a boss who talks to me in a polite manner.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, you can see the difference.
I am the
You can
boss.
see the difference. You see the difference between a Grok and a Gemini 3 and ChatGPT for some hard human
Oh, yes.
problems, and you can see the
way the tone is.
the tonality is very different.
And Grok has got good Rudy and bad Rudy. And if you
Chat has
if you're
5
trying
personality
bad Rudy, you
profiles
don't
now.
have anybody around you. You've got a 30 seconds and your
30
time
seconds.
starts now.
Sir, I know it's a cliche, but actually with AI, it's a great time to be a founder.
AI will do more things, humans will desire even more things.
What will happen is, I think humans will start reporting to AI, and AI will of course be reporting to humans.
Remember Danish said when DeepSeek came out, Chinese ने AI को भी सस्ता में बना दिया. All right, welcome to the start of 2026, our podcast. You know, we have this crystal ball for the future, like all VCs believe we do. And today you're going to hear from my partners, Amit, Bridge, and Shripati, what they see in the crystal ball of the future. So welcome, guys, to the show. And, I think this is one of those episodes where the year-end episode next year is probably going to debunk almost everything we say in this episode. But let's use our wildest imagination, perhaps, and of course, a little bit of rationale and logic behind it. For entrepreneurs listening to the show, what do we see happening in 2026? What do we see the ecosystem betting on? What do we think are opportunities? And how do we see, in this crystal ball that where we're picking companies to back at the start of their journey, and as the world evolves, what we think are likely to evolve as well, right? So to start with, 2025 has been a big year for us at Prime. We closed our 5th fund, right? So the first question is, one bet we are going to be willing to make and not feel bad about being wrong. Hope we are not going to pick the companies we've already picked.
Actually, I feel that about all the bets that we are making. Right? I think the VC world is about taking bets that others can't see, and then hopefully you're right about it. And if you're wrong, so be it. Right? You took the bet that you had high conviction on.
Not making me feel that much better, Bridge, I was looking for one bet. No, it's like everything we've done is probably in that category. But yeah, I see that at a macro level. But I think some things that you see are potentially very big, but hard to really gauge. It would be great to get a couple of examples of areas as well. Right? It doesn't have to be specific.
I'll give you one. We haven't invested in it, but think about it a lot, right? I think Shripati spent some time, Pankaj spent some time on this. Defense. I think we have taken a bet in something in biotech, which we wouldn't have normally done kind of earlier. So there are some of these very long gestation businesses where I'm reminded of your 000 story, right? Revenue for next 3 years is 0, 0, 0.
No, it was last year, this year. And
Okay, sorry. Last year, this year, and next, right? And yet it could be very big, right? At some point, and whether it fits in the VC typical 10 plus 2 year business model or not, one will have to figure out. But those are ones to kind of watch interestingly and see, right? Maybe the seed round for a defense company for Prime Ventures might be 5 years into the company, as opposed to a typically more like a year or year and a half, right? So those are couple. Space might be a little bit like that, although that's a little more mature with more clearer business models and maybe slightly lower gestation.
No, biotech is one, Sanjay, right? One we have done an investment. I think it could be the next sector that will create multiple large venture capital company, especially biotech in India, because of two factors. One, we have an R&D edge, right? The cost of scientists is actually far cheaper than what you will find in the developed economies. And second, we have the manufacturing edge also now. Like because of whatever has happened in the last 10 years, we have large contract manufacturers to create pharma and biotech products. So we have the talent advantage as well as we have the cost advantage, and we have taken one early stage investment in that space. So I believe that might be something that will surprise people. And even if that doesn't happen, I would not be sad about it because it is actually a very interesting space.
Yeah, I would say it's a bet on robotics, but looking at more automation versus autonomous systems. So, maybe we'll have to eat our words later, but I believe that the conversation and hype around autonomous systems, which is humanoid robots going around and doing things and picking and watering your plants, etc., is a bit overblown. It is very difficult to actually go ahead and create these things, and just the physics of it is difficult. It's sort of like a reverse pendulum, heavy top, and so on and so forth, and the mechanics of making this work. I mean, we do see dancing robots and all those things these days, but practically speaking, there's a humongous and large opportunity in automation here, wherein we can automate a whole bunch of things where it's a space is a little bit more constrained, but you're still using fairly cutting edge vision models, which are learning from real world physics and be able to incorporate that. But I feel very excited about those kind of that particular area.
Shripati, do you think it will be highly specialized robots? Given
Yeah,
the difficulty of just doing all human tasks, right? We have seen that in logistics and supply chain, a lot of automation. Like Amazon is popular for almost fully automating their warehouses.
that's correct. I definitely feel it's actually specialized robots. I mean, we are already begin to see this, right? You're talking about, say, for example, you have to there's an oil pipeline which has to be inspected and cleaned. Now a robot has to go inside that pipeline and trying to figure out where there is a leak or so on and so on and so forth, or doing that for our water supply in the country, right? So on and so forth. So these are like fairly specialized robots. Honestly, like the drones are really are an example of that. They're very specialized robots, and to the point that Amit was making, it's not just defense. It's like in defense, there are all these various aspects. There are drones which are attacking drones. There are drones which are drone shields, which are preventing these things, and so on and so forth. So I feel that the specialization where the intelligence is both focused on solving a particular task where which was just not possible for humans to do, or was really hazardous for us to do, and so we just had to live with those kind of constraints.
Yeah, I think just from thinking about it from my perspective, I think timing plays a very big role as well, right, in the success of a startup. And I think we've seen a lot of attempts in the financial services space around inclusion. And most of inclusion was really just focused on getting people a bank account, getting them, their government deposits in, and maybe a little bit of payments and so on. And while financial literacy itself has been an unsolved problem, etc. Been talking to a couple of founders. We also like to incubate some ideas sometimes, and I definitely feel that a lot of the building blocks are now in place. And I think certainly if I look at it from the next decade, opportunity, the combination of the technology savviness, the ease of access to, I mean, everybody's on UPI. We have a bank account. India now is at like 85% banked. I think financial services will see yet another boom, right? And it's going to be around true inclusion. I think Shripati closed the last podcast, the last year episode, saying we really sort of at the foundation of true financial inclusion. So I think financial inclusion will be another massive opportunity, and I feel the timing is closer to now than way out in the future. I felt this for the last 15 years, but I feel much more confident now. And so these are some things where I think, I would rather uh, attempt to solve to back founders that are doing things in this area of financial inclusion at mass market scale. I think what has also been successful in such companies is ultra frugality, right? As we saw with quizzes, right? We were probably 5 years early in quizzes, but they spent no money, and they kept using that time to build out an arsenal of ultra loved products across the board. And now with the age of AI, they're like able to turn on the afterburners because they built out so much of stuff, right? Similar with Dozy and the others. So all of these as VCs, we would rather be early to the party than too late. And, love to back such founders. But as long as they have the frugality mindset, I think founders can keep building up moats over a period of time and then attack at the right time. So, yeah, for first time founders starting out now, right? It's January 2026. What and how would you guide them that would be materially different from how the traditional ways of building startups?
So I would say that the challenge right now in building is obviously that it has to be AI native, right? This goes without saying. But what does that really mean in this era where the technology is currently rapidly evolving, like very, very fast? I would say that trying to almost build too far in the future is a liability because you're almost positively going to be wrong about where things are 12 months from now. If you hear what Sam Altman was saying 12 months ago, he was wrong about it. Right. So if he cannot do it right, being like, at the core of OpenAI, how difficult it is going to be for others here. So I feel that actually when you're driving in a fog, you just focus on the next 10 feet and make sure that you know what you're doing. I would say that think about where the technology is today. Of course, you have to make certain good assumptions about where the models are going to go and so on and so forth, but try to drive a value proposition which is here and now. That is part one, I would say, of it. And the second one I would say is that not thinking about moats is something founders will do at their own peril because you can get initial traction, but there must be a very distinct and clear point of view of how they intend to drive moats and differentiation for themselves with their customers. Even if they don't have differentiation, if they have stickiness, that's a very important thing because differentiation is very hard to say because when technology is so easy to build, yes, somebody else can also build it, XYZ can also build it. But if you have stickiness, which is what I mean by moats here, it actually is a much more compelling thing. So I would say that when you're building things, have a value proposition can be delivered in the near term, but which also helps you develop stickiness in the medium term.
So Shipati talked about stickiness. Amit, you talk a lot about distribution, right? And obviously the right answer is a combination of the two, right? So maybe you can talk a little bit about that side of things and any other thoughts as well.
Yes, I would say three things. In fact, the first on my mind was distribution. I think distribution becomes even more important as to how you're going to get it in the hands of the customer. There's a new one thanks to AI that is becoming very relevant, I guess, which is getting real deployment. Because everybody has AI budgets, everybody has to report to the board, everybody has to talk to Wall Street, Dalal Street, whatever. So everybody will do pilot projects, right? So everybody, will have Flipkart and
$20
Paytm
million
and 20,
AI budget for
yeah,
CIO.
and but are you really, for whatever it is that you're deploying or you're getting the pilot for, or even a commercial deployment, are you getting wallet share? Are you getting deployment? Are you landing and expanding? So in addition to distribution, kind of deployment. And the third one, at least for early stage, maybe more relevant, is people don't spend enough time figuring out customers' willingness to pay. Like what would they pay for, like how would the benefit analysis be, and so on and so forth. So I would say so distribution and willingness to pay, WTP, are unchanged. I think deployment is something I think a lot about, right? Are you getting 100% deployment or large deployment or expanding deployment? Because if you're not, then you may be one of the pilots that may be churned out just as quickly as you got in.
Bridge, maybe I'll ask you the counter question. What goes away, right? What was very important that may not be as important now?
I think the most obvious place is the number of people you need to build a company, especially as an early stage founder. 0 to 1 stages, right? As a founder, you are supposed to be multidisciplinary, right? How you will go about building a company. And with AI, it's actually a lot more fun to be a founder like that. You're not constrained by ability to have a creative team to write your creative copies. You can use AI for it. You're not constrained by number of engineers. You need to write a code because you might have one engineer, and with Copilot and your own ability to learn very fast, you should be able to write code. So the ability to ship has become much faster, right? And I don't think we will see a lot of founders aspiring also to have large teams. So there cannot be a better time as a than to be a founder. I know it's a cliche, but actually with AI, it's a great time to be a founder.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was speaking to a founder who we're incubating something with him right now, and he was telling me about his whole process. And he's a one-man army right now. He's saying, yeah, every now and then I think about bringing somebody on board, but he's building this product which is like the entire debugging, the bug fixing, everything. He's like built so much automation himself, right? He's like, I'm not sure I can easily bring somebody to start thinking like me, and right now I don't want to do it. I might have to go a little slower in the short run, but then it'll be set up to scale much faster, right? We'll see, right? And Sam Altman talks about this one person unicorn, right? At least then he later said, okay, by valuation, not by revenue. But even then, right, it is an extraordinary thought, right? And whether it's 1 or 10, I think, even we were looking at a company like Cursor that now is at like 150 employees, right, doing 200 million ARR. So to your point, I think the type of companies we're going to see, certainly the tech companies, right, which are not the ops intensive ones, are going to be very few, very lean and mean companies. What does that mean in terms of seed rounds in your mind? Are we going to see smaller rounds again because we're not going to need that much capital? Or are founders going to be sort of risk averse and say, well, people are nowadays taking 2 to 3 million in a seed round. Let me just do that.
Theoretically, the round sizes should come down because you need less resources to build a company. But practical reality is there is supply demand, right? There is a lot of people willing to write checks and founders who are willing to raise capital. And I think for a founder's perspective, you actually answered it, but avoiding risk, like you are anyways taking a big risk by starting a company. So now your job is to make sure that you're mitigating as many risks as possible. And capital is one of the big risks. Sure, I may not need as much capital to build the product, but I may still require a lot of capital to distribute it. So there is no harm in actually raising $3 million as a seed check. So I believe net net, it may not actually change. We may end up with the same check sizes.
I wanted to just add, Sanjay, that I think the human capital may be lesser required, but the cost of AI and the gross margins is a result of that, right? Even though the per token cost and so forth is coming down, it's still quite substantial, right? So that is unchanged. I think depending on what company it is, whether it's B2C or B2B, the cost of distribution still remains very high, right? So coupled with the supply and demand thing, I think it is still not going to be that kind of dirt cheap unless you get crazy organic distribution sort of stuff, right? There, the gross margin may be a little bit sort of questionable, but you're few people just getting distribution, whatever you monetize, right? You could potentially get away with slightly lesser capital to build.
And this question is again for everyone. Maybe I'll start with you, Shripati. For founders, should they be thinking about their gross margins and unit economics early, or focus more on building the best and the most extraordinary experience, right? And we've had this conversation in one of our portfolio companies as well, right? Well, I can use 11 labs and give a great experience, but I can't afford to use this thing in production, right? So I can demo something, but it's not really the real product. And every founder sort of has to think about that. Now, one might say, look, this price is just going to drop and better models will come anyways in the future. But when is it important for companies to make that call and focus on building a kick-ass product that gets great distribution, even if at negative gross margins initially, versus saying, no, I need to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure that everything works?
Yeah, I'd say it's an interesting trade-off. I would say the higher order bit for me is delivering the best value to the customer in terms of solving a pain point which they care about. It's not about solving a problem, it's solving the problem, right? Which is the CEO or CEO or whoever your customer is thinks that, yes, this is a clear and present headache I go to sleep with. And thank you for coming and offering this. And if that requires taking the best possible model, you of course should go ahead and do it because it's very clear that this is Moore's law on steroids in terms of tokens per per dollar or a price per token, which is coming down. So whatever you're using is going to get cheaper. But are you delivering the right value? Is still a hard problem. Just because you have the latest whiz buying models, you might not be delivering a problem. For example, if you're actually, and I think one of our companies is in manufacturing, it is on-prem deployment. If you go and try to bring a full-on general purpose foundational model and try to host it, it's just going to be a completely impractical approach. So you have to focus first on like, are you delivering the right thing? In which case you'll actually start making those trade-offs. But where you have the flexibility, of using the latest, greatest, Gemini 3 instead of, the OpenAI model, I would say definitely go do that if it actually is something which moves the value proposition for the customer.
Remember Danish said when DeepSeek came out, Chinese ने AI को भी सस्ता में बना दिया. Uh, but yeah, so I think what you're saying is focus on solving the right problem and solving it right? Because it's almost a binary outcome between by using a cheap model, and with prices will come down, may not be that particular model, so you may want to build an abstraction so that you can plug in a different model that is more affordable over time. But if you're not solving the customer problem, you don't have game.
Yes.
Right? I think that is the thing.
In the best possible fashion.
In the best possible, yeah.
I think on the same thought, eventually in the long span of time, all these startups are planning to build a business, right? Which basically means somebody has to be willing to pay for the product or services that I'm building it out, right? So you might want to take a longer term call that somebody will eventually pay this amount, and thus it is okay for me to spend more today. But at the end of the day, it is about that, right? So the value proposition that Shripati talked about must be seen enough in the propensity and the ability of the customer to pay you. And if that doesn't happen, then you have to actually go back to the fundamentals of building business, which is that I will not let my cost go out of scope.
Not. I think they both covered it.
What about what has changed in the early stage, right, for entrepreneurs, right? I mean, you had the gold rush in 2021, and then complete like reversal of what is growth? They're only focused on profitability. Are you profitable even at Series A? People were like, oh, you need to be profitable, right? Has some of that changed? Has it changed in pockets? How do you think about it, and how do you think the ecosystem is thinking about it?
Yeah, I would say many things have changed for the better. So one of the companies I think both Bridge and Shripati were referring to in the manufacturing space, Indian clients paying a few $100,000 ACV for software from an Indian company is sort of somewhat unheard of, right? And some of those ACVs are going to go to $500,000 million or whatever, right? So I think the appetite of people to pay for software is increasing a lot in India. So that market could evolve. I mean, still early days, but that is one. I think as the per capita grows up, right, for India, I think the consumer's appetite to pay for this is also increasing enormously. I'd love to know the breakdown of how many paying Gemini 3 or OpenAI paid customers in India, right? Is it still those 20, 30 million SECA, Flipkart, MyGate type of customers, or is it gone deeper? My dad was asking me yesterday, should I pay for this, right? And I'm like, okay, this is a great question from somebody, the senior citizen living in Jaipur, right? To say, so they're thinking about it, right? Like they're getting into the consideration set. So I think, but nonetheless, I think people will find enormous value in it, right? So both consumers will want to pay and so forth. Yeah, I think those are the ones that are there. I think the one that's a little murky, I know not exactly your question, is what happens to, SaaS is dead, long live SaaS. What happens with SaaS AI? What happens with building Indian software companies for the US market, either in AI or AI plus SaaS? That's something that we're sort of trying to navigate and see. Because earlier you had the advantage of cost, right? It gets relatively more lower cost engineers of a similar quality, and I could use the cost advantage both for engineering and for customer service. Now with AI, some of that goes away, right? So you have to not only build a world-class product, others can build it too, sitting in other markets. So that's something that certainly we are, as we all know, thinking about it inside the partnership. I know Shripati has got a thesis on it, but that's one that I think changes now.
Let's hear the thesis.
My thesis is that a whole new world of opportunity actually opens up for Indian entrepreneurs here, and it's predicated on a couple of things, which is that right now you would say that the core AI talent in India is not at the same level as the Valley, right? And we are quite a bit behind, or China. Why? Because the folks who are actually creating these foundational models are working on these foundational models and so forth, or even in the open source models, that particular cohort is very limited in India. I mean, there is Sarvam, which is developing a foundational model native to India. with Indian consideration and so forth. But we have very few of those kind of the companies and opportunities. My belief is that that particular talent pool is going to say improve and improve quite significantly. I mean, I think this is a maybe a 12 or 24-month issue. Yeah. But we are actually going to see that. And the same, and in that sense, the talent story which played out in SaaS in India, starting 2010, I recall actually talking with Amit, and he would say that actually there are no product managers in India because people who had done real product management, because we actually didn't have that notion, because we're mostly a back office. I don't think anybody would say that now. I think we have outstanding product managers here who deeply understand the customers and so forth. So I think that's going to improve. So what does that mean for the thesis, which is your question? I believe that we have an opportunity now to develop and deploy services software for the globe, including US. And what that means is that we had services, and services traditionally have had low gross margins. And that's because essentially it's an arbitrage on the cost per hour for a person here versus the cost per hour that the customer in a more developed
Take an
economy.
example of perhaps like a BPO or something.
Correct. Yeah. Or customer service or whatever it is, right? Or even just coding, right? That's really what you're doing. Hey, I'm going to pay an engineer X. I'm going to pay engineer Y. Y is less than X, and hence, this is a great opportunity. But with services software, you're actually continuing to provide the same service. However, it's being delivered with a combination of human and agents and human and software, which makes the per person productivity so much higher. And as a result, your gross margins start looking and approaching a product gross margin. And that means that the investability of services companies for VCs like us and everybody else in the ecosystem is a lot more attractive. So that's just that basic thesis. Now the question is, where is it being applied? And we believe that this opens up an opportunity to provide services and really good value proposition to a whole long tail of SMBs in developed markets. Because think about this from their standpoint, these SMBs actually, if you're a small accounting firm, you're a small law firm, you're a small manufacturer which is making just a distributor of these bottles or yoga mats or whatever it is. You have all these problems. You have a marketing problem. You have a scheduling problem, etc., etc. You are never going to be comfortable just tinkering around with software, putting in the cloud, changing configurations, mapping a latest AI model, because that is not your job. You're interested in taking Pilates classes and you want to just go and do it to the best of your abilities. But in comes a service provider which says, I will deliver it for you. No change in the way you do business, just that you're not going to miss any calls. You're going to provide the right a service for the right customer, right classes, right price points, right billing, and you can still go home at 5 p.m. and actually have your weekend off instead of stressing about it. They'll say, when can I deploy you?
Yeah.
That's the value proposition.
And we're seeing some early successes also in our own portfolio, right? With Kenko and Illumine and companies like that.
Absolutely. So we think that just opens up a huge, large possibility, and we're just scratching the surface on that.
And so we're talking about switching gears and talking about 5 years hence, right? What do you see both in the VC ecosystem as well as thoughts about Prime and how this will evolve over the next few years in this world of AI and how we will approach investing and what will remain the same. Shipati is always said the more things change, the more they remain the same.
Yeah, this is the 2-hour-long podcast topic, Sanjay, that you have just asked me.
And you've got a 30 seconds, and your
30
time
second.
starts now.
So 30-second answer is we should focus on what is likely to remain the same and, be reactive to what's changing. So what is likely to remain the same is the fact that humans will remain relevant and important, and maybe actually counterintuitively more important as more of AI agents proliferate our surroundings and environment. So that need for human involvement, touch, communication will probably go up. And honestly, all said and done, in spite of whatever is happening in AI, you will lead physical businesses. AI has to buy from someone, right? Somebody has to produce something. So eventually you will need that. So I think those are things that will remain the same, where we need to continue to look for opportunities to invest in. And of course, AI is a wave that is likely to change a lot of things, disrupt a lot of things. And every 6 months, we'll find something new that is happening that was not happening 6 months back. So we need to be reactive there more than proactive. So if you ask me about where AI will be 5 years from now, I have no idea. I don't know how many AI agents will be sitting in this podcast and talking to each other. We are seeing some examples already of Zoom meetings having more AI invites than real humans joining those. And may happen in the physical world also, but hard to project that going forward. And I think as we see, what we can do is just make sure we're reactive, quick, nimble in reacting to what's happening and continue to seek opportunities where things are remaining the same and back those founders.
So Bridge talked about what will remain the same, which means he's bounced the question, which by the way is also what he normally does. So that remains the same. Amit, maybe you can talk a little bit about what you think is going to change.
Yeah, so I think that these agents that Bridge was talking about, right, which are going to proliferate. So I think we did this at our offsite that we had with our team back in February last year, 2025, right? Which is that I think at least 50% of your job needs to be done by AI as you're doing it today. If you don't, you're going to be out of a job. And I think it'll play a lot more role in terms of cognitive ability to help, right? So this combination of working together. I remember Gary Kasparov had done this TED talk after one of the predecessors, right? Forget the name of the machine, the one that beat him, Deep Blue. Thank you, from IBM. Embarrassing. I used to be at IBM. So that is he even at that time said, look, human plus AI is going to really do it. And that is like now seems like 50 years ago that happened, right? It wasn't 50 years ago. It was
The
maybe,
AI will decide what the moves are, and the human will actually do the moves.
right?
No, I'm just
maybe,
kidding.
maybe. But no, in many, many areas, right? You can like the affordability for a top tier tennis coach or a golf coach or something else or a chess coach is extremely, extremely expensive. Now it's available for whatever the price of Gemini 3 or ChatGPT is, right? In fact, I wrote my first agent to help me improve my golf game, and it like already made an improvement, right, within like 2 days, right, of it, right?
When you're
So
going pro,
it's not a bad it's not a bad question, right? So I think that leveraging AI a lot more for our jobs, whether it is VC or otherwise, I think will become important. Same thing will be important for the companies, and so forth. The other, which is an interesting angle that I think about, maybe slightly longer than 5 years, is if all our work is going to be done by AI, what the heck are we going to do? So does this mean that we rise in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and want more entertainment, engagement, etc.? I don't want to use the standard like gaming and this and that. Like, what will we do with our productive time, right, so to speak, or time, like time at hand? Are there newer models that will emerge? Like, what happens there? I think that's something that we'll shoot more podcast. That also, you said the agents are going to do it.
or watch
The
Instagram reels.
agents are going to do it. And the last one, which I don't know, is that if it does end up happening that a lot of people either don't get jobs or lose jobs, right? And yet the world's population continues to grow, and India is, of course, fortunately or unfortunately, the kind of capital of the world in terms of population. Like, how do you solve for uh, kind of income, right? For a large mass of people. So I think a lot of interesting things will happen over the next 10 years, right? As AI makes us both more effective and more productive. That'll be interesting to watch.
Sripati, any thoughts on what fundamental problems like healthcare, for example, a lot of stuff around drug discovery, cancer treatment, early diagnosis, all these things. We're seeing startups trying to solve all of these, right? What has caught your fancy about something that was just not possible? You briefly alluded to robotics, so maybe some of that also, right? That suddenly now is not just possible, it's possible at an affordable cost in a reasonable time frame where one could build a startup versus needing this to be in the realm of a large multi-billion dollar organization that could afford to do this research, or universities at the other extreme.
I think that the huge opportunity here, right? So I'll make one comment about Amit's comment and then actually answer that, which is one thing which is not going to change and hence will keep giving us enormous opportunities to actually not only find companies but to keep funding companies, is that the human needs do not have an upper limit. Okay. So The AI will do more things, humans will desire even more things.
It's funny. I was watching a Netflix thing last night, and there is a sort of there's a lot of greed involved in somebody trying to build more and more yards and stuff. And his younger brother says, "I've got something that you don't have." And the brother says, "What?" And he says, "Enough." Right. So it's funny you just said this, and but yeah, human needs. One is on the greed side, the other is on the need side. I guess so. Both. Yeah.
I think it just humans are like that, right? I think we had this same. I'm sure the same conversation was there when the printing press or the spinning jenny was made in the Industrial Revolution, and they said, okay, like, what will all these people do, or what will we all do? And I think it's so that particular thing I believe in. So hence, this will lead to a new set of needs which we cannot foresee right now. To Bridget's point, and there will always be opportunities. In terms of the thing which I'm really excited about is that AI is going to make technology a lot more accessible. It's about access. We think about internet, we think about mobile phones and so forth, but who's actually using the phones for even just thinking about how many folks are actually ordering stuff online? Yes, it's a lot more than before, but it's a small minority to how many folks actually could do it. And a result of it is that the folks in the lower strata, or the poorer folks, pay more for things than the folks who are actually more affluent. And that's because their access to technology is just, there's a lot of friction there, like paying for it, ordering things, doing stuff, right? They might be actually taking 2 hours out of their job and hence probably not being paid for that hourly labor which they are in to go stand in line to buy provisions versus having those provisions being shipped from Flipkart or wherever where there is a Black Friday sale or what, and then actually showing up in their home and they could just go and have that, right? Not possible today. But AI and the applications built on top of that, using voice, using vernacular, having a deep understanding of what the needs are, and being able to connect with the upstream services can actually make this now suddenly possible. So I think that's what I'm really excited about. And I feel that as a country, India is value driven and very, very open to adopting technology. We have seen that with the smartphones, we have seen that with UPI, right? We had nothing to now we are the leading global digital users, right? So we will do it. And I think we'll become the leading AI application users as well. I think those are the kind of companies that we would be really excited to see and fund.
Awesome. Awesome. So, on that note, if you were to make a prediction for 2030, which is not that far out, right? What is a startup here that you think has not yet been created but could be a defining startup? You're welcome to be as wild in your imagination. But it should have some hope of getting to 2030. And by the way, this question is for all three of you, right? I guess all four of us. But yeah, in terms of something which could be solving some fundamental, it doesn't have to solve any problem, right? People do things for for no reason at all, but could be a defining startup.
Yeah, so I'll take a first stab at it since I'm also the least imaginative here. I'll just say what comes to my mind first.
Most realistic.
More realistic, yes. So I think the opportunity of, which is building on what Shripati just talked about, right? Like India is going to adopt technology fast, and India might be the largest AI application market in the world. And I think large part of Indian market has not been served, especially the small and medium enterprises. So if, and historically it has been because the cost of servicing them, cost of reaching out to them has been difficult, right? So I think there might be an opportunity now to create a defining company that will go out to these small businesses and enable them through technology and grow their business, manage their operations, and probably multiple things. Because of AI, those businesses are now going to be it will be practically possible to build those businesses and have a profitable business building that. And I think that might happen in near term in the next 5-6 years.
Amit, are you consulting your AI astrologer to
I
predict
am.
this?
I am. No, I think the ingenuity of founders is something that is sort of unmatched, right? So I'm not one, certainly not at this moment. So I think people will come up with crazy ideas. One area that I do think about is if with the proliferation of these AI agents, what will happen is I think humans will start reporting to AI, and AI will, of course, be reporting to humans. So how does that world work together, right? What if I were reporting to, what if LPs were AI agents, right, and had money, right? How does that world work is something that I do think about, not really clear. But it is going to happen, and it is for the first time. And this is not counting AGI and all that, right? This is not like the super consciousness, truth, whatever. I'm just like, if there are in Prime, if we have 15 employees and like 45 agents, how does that look like, and how do we work together, and like who's accountable for what, and how do you do kind of stuff like that is something that will happen for sure. There will be companies by definition which will have these hybrids with
New org design problem to be solved.
new org design problem to be solved, and I think it'll be interesting.
I'm curious how the AI will get incentivized. What will be the appraisals for
And
AI
how
will
will you
be?
pay it?
How will you pay it?
Yeah,
And he may actually leave the organization if you don't pay him enough.
absolutely, and the
He's
payment may
well,
be in
if he's
kind.
been trained well.
The payment may
Trained
be in
well, yes.
kind, that I want to run on that TPU or this GPU. Otherwise, I'm not working here. I need a better GPU, but I can't like keep burning.
Or need a boss who talks to me in a polite manner.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, you can see the
I
difference.
am the
You can see the
boss.
difference. You see the difference between a Grok and a Gemini 3 and Chat GPT for some hard
Oh
human
yes.
problems, and you can see
The way the tone at which
the
that it
tonality
does.
is very very
And
different.
Grok has got good Rudy and bad Rudy. And
Chat has
if you're
5
trying
personality
bad Rudy,
profiles
don't have
now.
anybody
Chat
around
GPT
you.
has 5 personality profiles now. They've launched.
Yeah,
You can
See, I
pick.
think that just bringing this back to like more, like what are the larger problems we might solve, right? I think there are certain
I
things.
never said that. I
Yeah,
said a defining startup doesn't have to solve any problem.
yeah, I guess so. It could be it could be a companion which does all kinds of, any rate. So I feel that some of these larger problems which seem a little bit unreachable, like for example, you're talking about climate change. Okay, so we could actually be trying to solve that, right? And I think that there is a very high potential for us to be making a significant dent in those kind of things, because that information, which is about collating a huge amount of data points and actually charting a path forward, is not something which is out of the realm of these kind of things. So that combined with, I mean, AI in one sense is an energy hog with all the data centers doing it. But at the same time, it might enable new breakthroughs, which enables us to have abundant energy available to us at a cheap enough cost. So I think that some of these forces have sort of started moving, which were previously, I feel they're a little considered too big or too out there problems for entrepreneurs to start addressing. And I feel we'll see some of those kind of entrepreneurs, seeing traction.
Yeah, actually, on one of my trips to Dubai, I think when we had gone for our team offsite this year, met an entrepreneur who understood, ecosystems of plants very very well, and was looking at reforestation, which was there were governments in Africa willing to give her in the thousands of acres of land. And that was the first time I understood that a forest is an ecosystem. There is a plant that is serving a certain purpose, and there is another plant that is feeding off of what this does, right? And she gave me some extraordinary examples, and she said it's not a question of planting trees, it is planting an ecosystem, right? And the discussion we had is, can we simulate this? Right, and I think technology is now getting to the point where one could simulate and have some expectation, because you can't wait 20 years for this forest to take shape. Is it worth investing in now, right? So some of these like crazy problems as you talked about in climate change, at least one could say, well, we can model it as well as we can, and we get the characteristics of all these plants and the soil and the climate conditions and how it will evolve and stuff like that. So I think some crazy problems. I was in this other conference recently where somebody was talking about making cancer a non-lethal thing, right, later in our lifetime, right, where whether it is detection, whether it is early treatment, all of these things. And we have also seen in this industry how already tech is being used. We have Dozy that is helping with early warnings and things like that. But I think some of these fundamental problems that were even considered unsolvable by human beings can now be attempted by startups.
I'll just give another interesting example, which is about geothermal energy, right? It's very abundant in the sense that our earth is hot.
Yeah.
You need to drill you need to know where to drill. But if you drill and you put water in, out comes steam and it does all kinds of power generation. Okay, so it's always on, it's completely clean, and potentially available everywhere. Yes. Except that it's at varying depth. So I think that you want to actually find it. It's a little bit like drilling an oil well, but probably less technically challenging in the sense that once you drill, you don't need to go around refining it or whatever it is, right? But the question now is that, okay, we have India is energy poor. We keep importing all this oil. Like, how do we actually go ahead and create geothermal thing? So imagine actually trying to be able to map, figure out what to do, and then having really low cost technologies to convert this. We might be having, in Rajasthan and Himalayas and all these places.
Surplus.
Yes, exactly. And this could be, so all these problems I think are going to get more tractable.
Yeah.
Maybe not solvable immediately, but will seem definitely more reasonable.
And while we alluded to it, little little more fun here. The board meetings, how are they going to evolve, right? I think we all, in fact, I use granola quite liberally, and of course, inform people that we are. But I'm also assuming that everybody is using something these days, right? I think you walk into every meeting assuming that whether you know it or not, somebody is transcribing it, and that's both got its issues, but also has its benefits. Um, but it's really fascinating. I've been using granola on and off, and now more regularly, and at least for our internal meetings, it's able to pull up the history, it's able to pull up what are my action items, what did I promise somebody, and I can just go type it in one place and it just automatically pulls it up, right? So I see it as a huge productivity tool here. And that's just at a productivity level for a board member. But how will the board meeting evolve, and how should founders approach them?
Will there be board meetings, Sanjay? That's a bigger question,
So
right?
this is like
Given the
our
fact
company
that
Cloud, right? That looks at all your conversations
exactly,
and helps you with your performance
and if you have
reviews.
granola and AI agents, you are always on, right? You know
Yes.
exactly what's happening. So maybe we'll not have the real board meetings that we have today. We'll probably have the AI representation of each of the members, the AI CEO talking to the AI board member and asking each other what was the last notes and then deciding what to do next.
Yeah, I think we'll certainly get into a mode of, on a more serious version of what you're saying is continuous awareness of, micro evolution rather than waiting every quarter to
Every
see,
quarter to actually
what
have a
has really
discussion.
happened, right? And I think maybe you're going to add something on
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So I would say that a lot of the more mundane transactional, like you're saying, being aware of stuff. Okay, what is budget versus actual? What's the CAC? What's this? All that will get less important. I think what I'm hoping or hopeful, since I need my own job, is that you'll end up asking higher quality of questions because a lot of the basic prep is done. Otherwise, you're barely catching up with this MIS, that report, this competitor, this chain, that person left from the org. Like I'm just like that's it, end of the board meeting. Whereas like, okay, what is the strategic thing that you're going to do or not, or what will the world look like, or can you launch into a new segment or whatever, right? So I'm hoping that will be a lot more higher quality conversation, and like a lot of the transactional stuff will be done
Will
by
get
your
done by
agent
the
and their
agents.
agent and
Yeah.
saying, yeah, I
Meet
got it,
offline
and
and get it
like,
done.
I just don't like that marketing went up too much, but here is the plan to mitigate it. Okay, done. But like, okay, how should we think about new opportunity area X or Y or like whatever? Like those kinds of things should become more
Which is
prominent.
really how it should be, right?
Yeah.
Looking for sort of exception situations, whether they need to be handled or need to be applauded, and looking for things which are not being done right, as opposed to the mundane things which are going right, and we're just patting each other on the back for doing things we were supposed to do in the first place. Maybe
I would
Shripati,
just add
yeah.
one more thing there, though, Sanjay, which is that I can definitely see that in the company and in the organization, one discussion item which will come up is around how the security, the alignment of AI, which is that is it actually doing what you think or what you want it to do, and probably an AI and ethics officer, a C-level kind of role, right, where you have to be responsible for it because now you're using all these things. You cannot say, "Oops, something happened. Sorry, it was an agent X which actually did it." Because the responsibility doesn't end with the agent, it'll actually end with a human being.
So that was actually going to be my next question. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more, Shripati, right? Some of these things that you look out for today, and founders should be looking out for as they org start sort of ad hoc, adopting some of these things. We're all sort of in this, we go into this candy store and there's a whole new set of AI tools and we start playing, and we're probably sometimes uploading real data or, third party data and things like which is meant to be sensitive and we don't really know. So what are some things you would guide people with on in the near term, right? And these might turn into real roles over time.
I would say that in a startup, actually, some of these problems don't quite emerge because obviously you don't want to constrain your employees and yourselves as founders. And I would say that for one, you'll definitely have an LLM as a co-founder, right? You should actually think about it that way if you are starting a company, because you're using an LLM to actually be your like the example you gave of the the entrepreneur you're working with, like he's really using LLM as a co-founder and helping figure out ideas and do all those kind of things, right? But in terms of like the question which you're really asking about what they should think about is that once they become even of a certain size, a modest size, they will need to have a very good and transparent idea of what is going on inside their organization when they are dealing with what AI models are, which are fundamentally probabilistic systems. And when you have a bunch of probabilistic systems talking to each other, it can actually lead to an outlier outcome happening, right? So you'll say, hey, like what happened here? Well, what happened is that India lost 20 tosses in a row, which is 1 in a million probability, 2 to the power 20. Okay. So it can happen. These things happen. So when you actually just chain all of these things together, you could actually have some really weird outcomes. So I think having alignment, having guardrails, and a really deep understanding of what's going on, you cannot just lump a whole bunch of things together and say, boom, I have magic. So the role of just both understanding and managing and governing these things will become equally important as you start building these companies. And hence, I was saying the earlier point about like actually having, there will be in the board meeting, the conversation would be, well, do you actually have this particular role who's the human being? And what are their responsibilities and what he or she is actually going to be presenting?
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's probably a podcast in itself. And we will do that sometime during the year as it sort of evolves and becomes more sort of well formed as a thing. So, yeah, maybe we can wrap up a little bit now, just go around some closing thoughts, messages to entrepreneurs for the year 2026. Amit, would you like to kick it off?
I know this guy, Sanjay Swami from Prime Ventures. He has this quote, the best is yet to come. I think it's great time to build. I think you must use AI. Whether I like this notion of using AI as a co-founder. I think build fast, iterate fast. I think lots of good things to happen.
So, Bridge, what would you attribute to Shipati or to Amit?
Actually, everything that they're about to speak.
Is
So I
rubbish.
let them. No, maybe. No. I think I will let them speak on their behalf. I will just say to what Amit mentioned that things change, but a lot of things remain the same. So what makes for a great company remains the same. That you should have an exceptional team. You should have a founder who can think through second order, third order effect of their decisions. Same grit and perseverance is required to build a company, whether you have AI or you don't have AI. So I think just if you stick back to what has been learned in the like decades of actually company building in the venture ecosystem, not just in India, but outside, then you're well prepared for what's likely to come in the next 10 years.
And I feel completely agree with what Amit and Bridge here mentioned. And I also feel that the field of entrepreneurship now is open and even as much wider than before to folks who are not tech folks, because now we are dealing with the understanding of human relationships, human needs. So folks who are in a field of psychology and linguistics and all other liberal arts and so forth, is this a great opportunity where they could actually let their creative sides take shape in the form of startups? I'm really looking forward to actually seeing those kinds of teams come forward.
Great, outstanding. And I would say, yeah, the combination of some of those things come and people from these new domains or combining forces with a tech co-founder, right, in this age, some of the things that can be whipped up like overnight. It's just a fascinating time, and I couldn't be more excited as well. Thanks, guys. And for all of you listening, if you're working on something super exciting, we'd love to hear from you.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners Podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.